Well, Christian, so awesome to have you with us. You mentioned that you want to share kind of a little bit of the story of your family business journey, but if you don't mind, give us a little bit of background about yourself and a little bit
Sure.
about the journey, and we'll dive in.
Well, great to be able to talk to you guys. Yeah, my name is Christian Bauer, and I'm from Guatemala. I went to school at BU. I did engineering there. Then I moved down to Miami. I worked there for a few years, started a property management company. Then I did my MBA. Finally decided that I really wanted to come back home, and I came back to Guatemala. So I immediately started a financial company with just a little capital that I had back then. My family on my dad's side was in the business of distributing here in Guatemala car spare parts, for automotives. So we had some big brands we represented here in Guatemala, and the business was started by my grandfather. My dad never really got involved in that business, so that business has been around for, I don't know, maybe like 70 years now. So I wanted to be involved in it in some capacity. And during the crisis of the financial crisis in 2008, the business that I had started, the financial business that I had started, ran into problems because were working at that point with a company in Miami that did trade finance, and the funding that they used was cut off because of that crisis. So we basically kept going that business on a smaller scale, but with our own capital. But I decided that maybe that's a good time to get involved in the family business on my dad's side. So I guess the biggest brand is Bosch. Bosch, it's a German company that I'm sure you've seen. Yeah, so we represented different brands, and I got involved. But at that point, I guess some of the interesting things that happened was that my dad never really wanted me to be involved in that business. I guess he wanted me to venture on my own and do my own things. And so he sold 50% to a cousin of his. So when I came in, this was like in 2011, 2010, I had to basically collaborate with my sort of uncle, the person who had bought 50%, and he was the president of the company, and I was the commercial manager in charge of like the commercial side of the business. And yeah, it was an interesting experience because from the beginning I felt like some things we weren't on the same page with my uncle, and my dad really didn't get involved in it, and really didn't give me the opportunity to like have a position. We were in the board of directors, my dad, him, my uncle, and myself, and then we put in some other external directors. But yeah, I just didn't trust this guy too much, and so it was a difficult time because the when he took over the how would you say it, the profit of the company started to go down and down, and I would see that happening, and I really didn't get a chance to voice my opinion on the things that weren't being done right. I was a little kid. My uncle has a lot of experience in a lot of businesses, and he was making like the bigger decisions and giving us directions of the managers, me on the commercial side, and there was a financial manager and so forth. But yeah, that was a bit of a struggle. Move forward to 2007.
Can I ask you a question about that? So your dad owns 50% at this point. Your uncle owns the other 50%. Your dad's still in the business. Is your uncle a silent partner, so to speak, or is he literally working in the business?
He was the managing director, so like the CEO, you could say, of the business. He was working part-time on that business.
Yeah.
And
Um,
how old were you?
I was, let me see, 2011, I guess this was. So I was born in 78, so that's like 30 something years old,
Yeah.
early 30s.
But you had already run your own business. You graduated B school.
Yeah, yeah. So,
It's not like you're a kid. I mean, you've got
Right.
some serious business experience behind you. Still
yeah,
young, but
yeah, I was still young, and I felt like I had a lot more to offer in terms of making the business more profitable. And it really was hard to see that the profitability of the company was going down because of the decisions that this guy was making. But and looking back, and hindsight is 2020, I think what he was doing was setting everything up so that he could buy the company cheaper later, the other 50%. So, that kind of went on for several years. And I kept my financial business going, but I was putting most of my attention to this other company. And I guess the difficult situation was that my dad, his intention was to sell, and I didn't want him to sell. And just to go back to your comment, my dad had 30%, and I had well, he had like 35%, and I had like 15%, and this guy had 50%.
yeah.
And we had a shareholders agreement, and this is moving forward on my first experience, and because I had like several situations that I've learned in my career, in my professional career, but this was a big one back then. And basically, we had a shareholders agreement that said that if anybody wanted to sell, the first person who had the right to buy was anybody from the immediate family. So it was set up so that if my dad wanted to sell, that I was the one who could buy it first. But my uncle, he did some things with his lawyers to convince my dad that he could sell to my, that he had to sell to my uncle. And I was left in a position where, look, if he's going to behave like that, I'd rather be out of the business, and I don't want to be with a partner like that. So that's when I made the decision to sell my shares of that business, and my dad decided to sell, and we got out of that business in 2019. And that leads me to another experience that I had, was that which was completely different. And it was something really interesting, that on my mom's side of the business, my mom's side of the family, my grandfather, who recently just passed away last year, but back then he was a shareholder of a company that sold manufactured paper products, and this was led by the CEO was my uncle, my mom's brother. And my grandfather made the decision to tell his son and his two daughters to let one of the children from each of his children, basically his grandchildren, to create a structure, a company for the next generation, and to be able to pass the capital that was created in that business, the paper company where he was a shareholder. He wanted to sell that company, but he didn't want to just give the money to each of his children and just let it be like that. He wanted to create something that would pass from one generation to the other, and so he gave us that responsibility. And on my mom's side, I was the responsible person to be involved, and my uncle, one of his sons, was involved, and then my aunt as well, one of her sons. So the three of us created this structure from zero, basically, where we drew up. We created this company, and we drew up also a shareholder agreement that would set up the rules on how to move forward from one generation to the other. And this was a really positive experience in general. There's some things that we fumbled along the way, but yeah, I think this allowed us to take the assets from my mom's side and basically structure it in a way that the generation above us could get, you know, my mom is in her, she's 70, and my aunt and uncle are also around that age. So we created this structure so that they could live off of the dividends of this company, but it allowed like the next generation, it allowed us to be involved in a way so that we can do something to create value for the next generations. And that's, you know, that's something that was interesting. So that's another experience that I had, another experience share that I can share.
The new company that you created with the three of you, is it a third, a third, a third? How do you keep, how do the voting rights work in that company? And how do you find that dynamic?
Yeah, it is a third each. And so the dynamic is that there's 3 directors, and the shareholders are, for example, my mom, my uncle, and my aunt. So we set up certain rules based on what they told us that they needed to live, an amount of money that each one needed to live off. So we set that as a minimum, that the company should, if the company makes a certain amount of money, then that goes to them. Any surplus from that we can reinvest based on certain rules. For example, we set certain rules about industries that we can invest in. We set certain rules about different risks that we can take. And they allowed us that leeway to make decisions based on these rules that we created. It's a Panamanian company, and I know that a few years ago the Panamanian companies didn't have a good name, but I think things have changed. But it's basically an offshore structure that owns different assets and investments, and then we basically are the directors of that company.
So it's interesting. So you have kind of the older generation as the board members dictating a set of rules, guidelines, and structure. So you structured everything ahead of time. And that's where a big mistake comes. It's like once we start things going, then we'll figure out how to do it. It's like, no, figure out how to do it, get the structure around it. And then you, as the next generation, are kind of running it, building it, developing it. But the board is really a very controlling board in a good way, that you have these boundaries. And the idea is you'll then graduate into their positions for the next generation. So the generation that's in charge has some controls and some oversight involved. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's the way we've set it up. Yeah.
Now, are you, as far as in Guatemala, do you come from a family? Where would you rank yourself in kind of your family in the economic positioning in the company? Are you a well-known family in Guatemala that it seems like you've been entrepreneurs for a long, long time?
Yeah, my let's see. I think there was a lot of opportunities. Maybe 50, 75 years ago here in Guatemala, in terms of just there was raw potential. If you would start anything up, there was potential to make it grow. Right now, I think the environment is a lot more competitive. There's still a lot of opportunities. Those are the 2 family businesses that I'm involved with, but I've started, or I'm the shareholder of 3 other companies that have nothing to do with my family, and I'm involved really in those companies on an operating basis. So to answer your question, yeah, I would say that I've been blessed with, with growing up in a family that had different businesses that that provided I don't know how you say it, but yeah.
You've had an above average lifestyle and economic status growing up.
Yeah. I just don't want it to sound bad.
No. Look, it is what it is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're born into the families we're born in. I find myself extremely grateful that I was born here in the United States and not, you know, Nigeria. You know,
Sure.
it's like luck of the draw. Just so it goes a long way. But I was just trying to get a sense because there is a multi-generational system going on here. What do you think the lessons, as you look back at the various generations, what's been, you know, what's transpired, knowing what you know now and people that are going through this and trying to plan for the next generation, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen or some of the good things that you're like, when you consider this, make sure you do X or make sure you don't do Y?
Yeah. Okay. I guess this is something that I've taken into account in my new ventures that I've done on my personal, on a personal level. But some of the things that I, looking back in terms of the first experience that I mentioned with the auto parts, it's basically, there can be problems with the people inside your own family. So the having rules and having a structure that everybody feels comfortable is, I guess, the first step, and is like the base of a good foundation in terms of just a governance in a company, making that work. The next step, then the other thing that I would take from that experience is just communication. I think that if we would have had better communication in terms with my dad, with my uncle, I think things would have been different. But just letting things be without talking them in an open way, and just what was a formula for disaster, and that led to what happened. So good communication, a good structure, and rules and guidelines would be two of the main ones. And yeah, just keeping in mind that, for example, right now the companies that I'm involved with, I have shareholders in two of them, and we get along very well because I guess from those experiences I learned to be very open with the information, with the the vision of the company, and where we want to go, and just making sure that we're all on board on the same vision. And if somebody disagrees, it's fine, but at the end of the day, you got to talk it over, and make sure that you do have to come to terms with the direction of the company, because if people are pulling in different directions, it's going to be really hard. And I guess the other big lesson was that it wasn't worth it to be in a company where the environment of the partners was not healthy, and just I feel so much better working hard towards something when the people that are involved are just, they allow you to work in a nice environment where there's no friction, I guess, all the time, with just like from really minor things to the general direction and vision of the company.
We've done a dozen of these, and the one common thread is communication, governance, and make sure that there's a written plan and guideline and protocols, and what are we doing? How do we do it? Leave nothing to chance, but communicate, communicate, communicate.
And document it, communicate and document it,
Yeah.
because we have these conversations across the dinner table, and you feel like you're on the same page, but unless it's on paper, it's hearsay of sorts sometimes.
Yeah.
I love the structure that, your mother and your aunt, your uncle have put together it's a great structure. I love
Yeah.
that, right? And it's very clear. There's still the involvement of them for the knowledge that they've had to pass down to you, and obviously it sounds like they want the dividends, right, to help them be retired in a healthy way. and then you have the flexibility to reinvest or take profits out. What is kind of unique about that is also is they've gone a step further to say, if we're doing another investment, we only have this much autonomous decision making and risk,
Yeah,
right? Which is, I think, wise.
yeah,
And if you want to take risks in other ventures or industries, we'll do it with your own money, and which you've done, and which foresight is great. How long did it take them? Did that just come to them naturally, and your family naturally, to based on past experiences, or how did y'all kind of think of that?
You know, I'm the oldest of the cousins, so I have had more experience, and I basically, my grandfather was getting older, and I think he had a lot of trust in myself and my cousins. But being the oldest one, he had a lot of trust in myself, and I proposed a plan to do this structure and how to set it up and everything, and things started to make sense for them, and yeah, I guess it was surprising that my grandfather decided to jump kind of a generation, right? But at the same time, you know, they're older, and I think it made sense for them to pass that on and to us that we're a little bit younger.
Well, and so that structure, it sounds like that was helping to establish trust too, right? He's putting a lot of faith in you, and this is a way of you also saying, "Listen, this is you have guardrails in place to
Yeah.
further be able to trust."
And that's something you mentioned that I hadn't thought of, but I know that it's key, and it's um how can I say this, like transmitting trust, you know, making sure that people feel good and feel comfortable with the situation, and like you said, I guess the key for that is good communication, you know, providing information and having a good structure, and just based on another case that I have with my sister, with some businesses that we have still on my father's side. I from day one, and I've done that for years now, since I was you know, just graduated from college, that I started to get involved in some of these businesses. I would be completely transparent to her about everything about the business, and especially about things like salaries that I would earn and things like that, because many times what I've seen is that people just imagine the worst, or imagine that something bad is happening when you don't tell them. So
yes.
so I guess that's a big lesson that I've learned over time, is just if you're open with your communication, and especially with things like that, like um those pain points, like salaries and things like that, where you're, you know, some people are being benefited in a different way than others inside as shareholders or family members, then those are the points where you have to be even more careful about being good at communicating.
I have a company, and I share with the shareholders every month financial results, full financials. And we're not interested. I don't care. You don't have to show us. I do. For my sake, I need to show you every month. Whether you look at it or not, it doesn't matter. But I want you to know every number every month.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
Christian, what about the non-family members? Do you share financial information with, or any non-family members anywhere on the leadership team? And you kind of trickle down transparency, or not so much?
So with the family businesses, I would say financial information is mainly for the shareholders and for key executives, like the financial manager and things like that. On my personal businesses, then there I'd like to be a little bit more open with information, just because, you know, I think it helps for people to know certain information, and to have their feet on the ground about what it takes to do certain things. And because if not, they may be thinking that, you know, the company is just swimming, you know, in money, and there's just a vast amount of capital to invest in different things, and just, you know, so that's my experience, is just being open with the information as much as you can.
My we have a belief at our company and that family businesses are exponentially harder to run than non-family businesses. And if you can get a family business down right, then the non-family businesses are going to be super easy.
Yeah.
You can be transparent and master communication within the family. And if it's natural and if it's the right thing to do in a non-family business or with other employees, it's going to be super easy. What about the next generation? Do you have any kids, or are you all kind of already thinking the next generation now and kind of just copy and paste the methodology you've used already?
Yeah, I have three kids. They're 15, 13, and 11. So yeah, my personality, I'm an engineer and I'm very structured. So maybe too much in some sense because, I struggle sometimes with the creative part. But yeah, so I do try to think about what I can do. In terms of the kids, this is a conversation that I have sometimes with my EO forum members, and it's interesting because you don't want to make them think that they don't have to work for everything, and you don't want them to think that they're entitled to certain things. Um, I want my kids to know that they have to go out in the real world and work for everything they want, and not life doesn't give you anything for free, and so you got to earn it, and in that sense, yeah. But at the same time, do I want to leave something for them? Yeah, it's kind of what I work for. It's just to be able to leave that um, something for the next generations, and so it's kind of a balance in that sense. But going back to having a good structure and being open with them and telling them that, look, just because I have one son and two girls, that doesn't mean that one of them is going to be in a better situation than others. Everyone is equal and in the same situation, and I guess that's I have some experiences there as well, but at least on my dad's side, he was always, that's what he taught me, was to if he would give us you know something, even if it was something very very meaningless, he would do the same for my sister, and kind of that was the way I was raised up. And when I negotiated, because my sister did have shares as well in that automotive spare part company, and when I negotiated the same for her. It was a really uncomfortable situation, but what I did was to try to protect her, and just being able to be open with her with everything. Yeah.
It's great that you remember those little things, like when your dad would give you something, he would also give your sister something as
Yeah.
well. It's those kind of, so a lot of those childhood memories, they come up in a lot of different ways all the time. I'd kind of will tell people and joke people, like my dad was a very cheap tipper. He wouldn't tip people very much money, right? And in the US, it's 15-20% tip. He'd take the change out of his pocket because he was a teacher and he worked really hard. And that's what we would kind of tell ourselves of why is he so cheap, that he's not very tipping. But then I go on in life and it's like, I struggle to want to tip, right? Because I
Tell
got
the truth. He's telling the truth.
I get that from my dad, but my wife is like, you're tipping 20%. So, but
There's
we
always
get,
somebody.
yeah,
Yeah.
we get these little things when we're little and as we're growing up that we learn from our family members, and it kind of carries on. And sometimes we have to morph, or break our prior kind of teaching and learnings and evolve. So it's interesting that, as you kind of grow into it. Now, I think you said your mother and grandmother, they really wanted this business to be in the family for multiple generations. Did you say that?
I guess what I wanted, what I meant is that my grandfather, he wanted
Grandfather.
to, first he wanted like the unity of the family. And I guess that was a priority in terms of not giving money to each of his kids and just, everybody goes their own way. I think he felt like by doing this, it was a way to keep the family together in a way. But also, yeah, to pass the what he had created to the next generations. He was like an awesome grandfather to me, and even to his grandkids. So he was always thinking about the future generations, and that was something really cool that he was always thinking about that. And I guess in a way he had the fear that maybe if he gave the money to his kids, that who knows what would have happened, right?
That's powerful.
And it's interesting too, because it's a double-edged sword. You want to keep the family together, so let's keep everyone in the business, connected to the business. Now you've got the family in the business. Now, if something doesn't go right in the business, it can cause issues on the personal side. So you got to be really careful with that
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah, yeah, and in that case, right away we did run into some situations where I was more pushing towards reinvesting more, and I had pushback from a couple of the other people involved in terms of they wanted to get more money for further retirement, you know. So and it's something that I had to respect and live with. But yeah, it's kind of, it teaches you to be able to go along with certain things that is not my priority or not the way I would have done it, but
Yeah.
in order to make things work.
My ex-father-in-law wanted to do the same thing, and he did. He gave the business to the son, and then the daughters, he gave them the real estate that the business is sat on, which sounds pretty good until, and I said this to him years ago, I said, you ought to set like a 100-year lease so the brother and the daughters, don't end up, or sisters don't end up arguing about what the rent's going to be in 5 years.
Yeah,
Because what do those girls want? High rents. What does the boy want? Low rents.
yeah,
Yeah.
Not a good scenario.
yeah, conflict for sure.
Absolutely.
Your grandfather is a real visionary, right?
Yeah,
That
he
is,
was.
I think that's the only way really to describe it. Very thoughtful, intentional. Um, I wrote down unity of the family. I mean, it kind of blends into this topic of legacy, right? Is this something
Yeah.
that is talked about, spoken about within the family, or is it just this kind of understanding? Tell me about that.
I guess within the family, the word legacy is not really mentioned per se, but yeah, it's implicit that's kind of the goal is to leave that legacy, or to transcend. Actually, the name of the company is Capital Generation, or CapGen. So it's kind of interesting
Yeah.
because it's kind of a double meaning. It's like generating capital, but also capital for a generation, for the next generation.
I love that. So
Yeah.
much intention with that. What about, so your kids, you said 15, 13, and 11. So is there any kind of hint of desire to work in, whether it's this family enterprise or business or another, one of the other investments? Or do they not want to have any interest and they want to be artists?
Well, my wife, she's an interior architect, so my oldest daughter, I think she's going more on that line of architecture, and
Yeah.
my son, I'm not sure. I think he's 13. He's
Yeah.
more thinking about other things right now. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll see. But I tell him that, look, I want him to make his own path, and if someday it happens that he ends up working in the companies that I am the shareholder of, that's great. But first, I would want him to work in other companies and get
Yeah.
experience and all that before.
That's a common path, right? Go to school and college and get your education, work 4 or 5 years. We're here if you'd like us. Um, sometimes we see is the longer they go into the 30s, late 30s, there's this sunk cost. It's like, well, they're so entrenched in that business until, there might be some scenario where you're really needed in the family business or something, but obviously he knows it's always there, this path to be a part of the family business.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the idea. And it's a little bit different. I guess we're all a result of of our upbringing and our life experiences, right? Everything that we are a result of that. And I'm a result of that. My dad never wanted me to be involved in the family business. So I guess I'm more open to not being like that and just kind of learning from that experience. And yeah, it's important for my son to have experiences in other places, things like that. And I'm never gonna make it, you know, in a way so that he has to work for one of my business. But if it happens, then great, you know, we can do something together, and I'll enjoy that.
Well, Christian, this has been a phenomenal interview, man. I absolutely love it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is
I was
you've got a
able
great
to.
journey.
Yeah, I hope I was able to provide with you know, some interesting experiences,
Yeah,
and
man.
that was kind of the goal.